What kind of woman climbs onto a train knowing the man at the end of the tracks might save her life or ruin it forever? Eliza Granger asked herself that as the fourth train in May rattled across the Midwest, each mile pulling her farther from the life she had fled and closer to a man she had never met. She held her small canvas bag tight against her chest, feeling the edges of her sewing kit through the fabric like it was a shield. Her hands ached from the cold draft, slipping through the freight car, but she didn't loosen her grip. The letter that started it all had been wrapped in torn linen, the handwriting stiff and unsure, as if the man who wrote it had struggled for every word. A rancher from Devil's Throat, Wyoming Territory. His name was Matthew Klene. His message had been simple, not romantic, not full of promises she no longer believed in. I have land, and I am alone. If you come, I will keep you warm, and I won't raise my hand in anger. I've seen what harm a man can do. I want peace. If you do too, write back. Eliza had lived worse than harsh words on paper. Her body carried the memory of men who spoke soft and hit hard. A rib that healed crooked, a scar behind her ear, a missing tooth. She wasn't proud of surviving. It was just what she had done because the world had left her no choice. She kept the letter under the floorboard for 2 nights. Only after Ma Gert, the old boarding house keeper, coughed blood into a handkerchief and whispered she wouldn't last the spring did Eliza write back. I am not pretty, and I am not young. I can work. I won't be struck again. If you drink, I won't come. If you lie, I will leave. If you still want me, I'll arrive on the 4th train in May. She did not send a photograph. She didn't own one. Now she sat between runaway girls and desperate women, the freight car clacking like bones against steel. Every town they rolled past looked smaller, grayer, and more worn than the last. When the conductor hollered Devil's Throat, Eliza stood so fast her knees shook. She stepped onto a cracked wooden platform carved out of dust and bitter wind. The land around her looked like punishment. Sharp hills, dry riverbeds, lonely sky. The platform was empty. Then he appeared. Matthew Klene walked toward her with long, steady steps. Taller than she expected, sunbitten, built like a man who worked more than he slept. His hat shaded a face with a quiet strength she couldn't read. He stopped a few feet from her and tipped his hat. You made it. He didn't smile. He didn't reach for her hand. He just said it like a simple truth. Eliza nodded. She didn't trust her voice. He lifted her bag, placed it in the back of the buckboard, and helped her up. The ride to his ranch was long and silent, dust curling through the seams of the wagon. She watched the land stretch wide and unforgiving like it was daring her to stay. Matthew's ranch sat on a rise overlooking a dried-up creek. Fences leaned like tired men. The barn sagged on one side. Only 2 horses and a thin black dog watched them arrive. This is it, Matthew said. I won't pretend it's much. Eliza stepped down. The house looked wounded. Wood, stone, and stubbornness barely holding each other together. Inside there was 1 table, 2 chairs, a stove, a single blanket folded neat, a Bible with worn edges. Nothing more. He showed her a small room with a narrow bed and a window that stuck when opened. You can use this, he said. She placed her sewing kit on the table. It was the first thing she had ever owned without someone taking credit for it. They did not speak much that night. They did not touch. She didn't take her boots off. She slept lightly, one eye, always half open, a habit she had learned from danger. In the days that followed, she cleaned the place top to bottom. She stitched curtains from old feed sacks, patched the roof with canvas, and boiled the well water twice before drinking. Jonah, the black dog, circled her like she was a question he couldn't answer. Matthew worked the land in silent purpose. He didn't hover or command. He simply moved around her like a man who knew gentle space better than gentle words. One morning, while sweeping the room, she found a bottle under the bed. Her breath caught. The shape was familiar. Memory flashed bright and ugly. She said nothing. The next day, the bottle was gone. She never saw it again. Slowly, she learned him by observation. The scar on his arm that looked like a knife wound. The way he spoke to his horses more than to her. The candle he lit between their rooms each night, a soft glow reminding her he was there, but would not cross without permission. After a month, she finally asked him, "Why did you send for me?" He was mending a fence. He didn't turn. "Because I was alone. And I know what that does to a man." She understood. Loneliness was a wound, and some wounds drove people toward kindness, while others drove them toward cruelty. Still, a part of her stayed clenched. She flinched when he moved fast. She locked her bedroom door at night with a chair under the handle. He never asked why. He just let her be. Then one evening a gunshot cracked the sky open. Eliza dropped the bucket of water. Jonah crouched low. Matthew grabbed his rifle, eyes sharp, scanning the hills. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He just looked at her. "Get inside. Stay low." She obeyed. From the kitchen window, she watched him walk toward the barn, steps steady but tense, like a man who had lived through violence and hoped he was done with it, but knew better. Eliza held her breath. The shot wasn't meant for game. Something else was coming. Something with a past. Something she feared she already knew. And deep down, she understood this truth. Her old life had found her, and it would not leave quietly. The morning after the gunshot, the world felt different. Eliza woke before sunrise, the air sharper than usual, like the land itself was holding its breath. Jonah paced the floor, restless and alert. Matthew was already outside, standing by the fence with his rifle slung low on his arm. He looked like a man expecting trouble. 2 days passed like that. Quiet. Too quiet. Jonah refused to wander far. Matthew checked the hills 3 times a day. Eliza watched the horizon the way a hunted animal watches shadows. Then she saw the tracks. She had been hanging laundry when she noticed the boot prints stamped deep into the soft dirt near the fence line. 3 sets. Heavy steps. Wide stances. Men who walked like they owned whatever they looked at. Her stomach twisted. She showed Matthew. He crouched beside the prints, touched the dirt with 2 fingers, and frowned. "You recognize them?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I know the type. Men who come to hurt something." The way he said it made her skin prickle. That night, Matthew sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees. He didn't ask her to stay inside, but she stayed anyway, leaning against the doorway with a cup of coffee she had brewed twice as strong. After a long hour of silence, he finally spoke. "There was a time I was like them," he said. Eliza stiffened. "Not with women," he added quickly. "Not like that, but angry. Drunk, wanting a fight. The war took pieces of me. I don't know if I ever got them back." She didn't answer. Not out of judgment, but because it was rare to hear a man speak plain. Truth from a man was rarer than gold. "I killed a man once," he said. "Not during the war, after." She waited for him to explain. He didn't. Instead, she said, "I think I understand." And in that quiet, with coyotes howling somewhere in the hills, something fragile but solid settled between them. A trust built from scars, not words. The next morning, trouble arrived like a storm. Hoofbeats thundered across the valley. Jonah barked. Eliza ran to the window. 3 riders. Men with slumped shoulders, dusty coats, rifles resting across their laps, wolves looking for an opening. They didn't come straight to the house. They circled the fence line slow, studying every corner of the ranch. One of them pointed toward the barn. Another laughed. Matthew walked out before they came closer. He didn't raise his rifle. He just stood firm, feet planted like roots. "Can I help you, boys?" he called. The youngest of the riders, wearing a red bandana, smirked. "Just looking for a friend," he said. "Heard he might have passed this way." Matthew shook his head. "Ain't seen anyone except my horses." Quote. The second man leaned forward in the saddle, eyes cold. "That your wife behind the curtain?" Eliza didn't hide. She let the curtain fall slow so they could see her watching. Matthew's voice didn't change. "That's my business. You boys best ride on." A long silence followed. The dog growled low. The oldest man tipped his hat with a mocking smile. "We'll be seeing you again soon, mister." They turned their horses and rode off, leaving deep prints behind them, like marks carved on a warning. Matthew came inside. Eliza met him at the table. "You know them?" she asked. "Not by name," he said, "but I know their kind." She swallowed. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from old memories clawing their way to the surface. "They weren't looking for you," she said quietly. "They were looking for me." Matthew didn't blink. "Tell me why." She hesitated, but the truth came out anyway. "I left a man in Missouri. He wasn't mine. Not truly. But he owned everything around me. Claimed I stole from him. Claimed a lot of things. I didn't look back when I ran." "What did you take?" Matthew asked. Eliza lifted her chin. "Only myself." That was the first time he reached for her hand. "I won't let him take you again," he said. And for the first time in her life, she believed a man when he said such a thing. For a while, it seemed like preparation might be enough. Matthew set traps along the perimeter. Eliza practiced shooting until her wrist ached. Jonah patrolled the yard like a shadow with teeth. Then the fire came. 3 nights later, the barn burst into flames so bright they turned the sky red. Horses screamed. Jonah bolted toward the blaze. Matthew ran shirtless into the firelight, grabbing the reins and pulling the animals free. Eliza lifted her rifle and looked toward the hills. She saw 3 shapes, 2 on horseback, 1 on foot, holding a lantern high like a trophy. They were laughing. Their laughter cut through her like a blade. She raised her rifle and fired. The man on foot dove behind a tree. The horses reared. 1 rider fell hard. Another shot toward the house. A bullet slammed into the water barrel near her head. Matthew dragged the horses out of the barn, coughing through smoke. Eliza reloaded. Fired again. The older man with the flat brim hat fell back, rifle slipping from his hands. The third man ran into the darkness. By the time the barn collapsed, flames swallowing the last beam, the gang was gone. 1 dead. 1 injured. 1 escaped. The ranch smelled of smoke and danger. Eliza stood shaking, rifle still hot in her hands. Matthew walked to her, soot covering his chest. He didn't speak. She didn't either, but they both knew the truth. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. The body was buried by sunrise. Matthew dug the grave without a word, sweat streaking through the soot on his skin. Eliza stood beside him, arms folded tight, her face hard as the frozen ground beneath their feet. Jonah limped in slow circles, sniffing at the burned edges of the barn. "They'll come back," she said. "Yes," Matthew answered. But neither of them said what they feared most, that the next time they wouldn't be this lucky. That afternoon, they rebuilt what they could, reinforced the doors with iron, set deeper traps along the brush line, sharpened fence posts until they were stakes. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a fortress. And still, the land felt too open, too quiet, like eyes were watching from places the light didn't reach. 2 days later, the message came. A wooden stake hammered into the earth by the well, a severed hawk tied to it, a scrap of paper soaked stiff with dried blood. "She's ours. She stole blood. We'll come to collect. There are more of us than bullets in your house. No signature." Only a crude spade carved at the bottom. Matthew read it once, then burned it in the stove. Eliza didn't tremble. She had shaken enough in her life. Instead, she sharpened her knife and watched the flames swallow the letter. That night, she found Matthew sitting by the fence line, boots still on, hands wrapped in cloth. The moon lit half his face, leaving the other side in shadow. "You should sleep," she said. He didn't look at her. "They won't stop." "Then neither will we." He turned toward her then. The wind pushed her hair across her cheek, and she didn't brush it away. For the first time, she saw the fear in his eyes, not fear of dying, but fear of losing what he had just begun to build with her. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly. "I'm not," he said. "I'm standing beside you." So she sat beside him, their shoulders touching in the cold. She took his hand, not gently, but sure and steady, and he held it like an anchor. The next morning, Matthew rode into town to chase a name. Eliza stayed behind with Jonah, 2 rifles, and enough courage to fill the whole Wyoming Valley. He was gone for 4 days. On the 5th, he returned with a bullet graze across his shoulder and a torn bounty poster. The man she had shot had 5 brothers. Together, they ran a crew called the KD Gang, famous for raiding outposts and stealing women from towns too small to fight back. Matthew said nothing about what he did to get that information. The silence was enough. That night, she kissed him, hard, without fear, without hesitation. And he kissed her back like he'd been waiting for her to choose him, not out of need, but out of knowing. For a while, there was peace. Fragile, but real, until the smoke rose again. It came from the east this time, drifting low and slow, too close to ignore. Matthew was in town. Eliza was alone. She fed Jonah, loaded both rifles, stepped toward the pines with steady breath. Half a mile out, she found 2 boys, barely grown, huddled around a small fire. One skinning a hare, one half asleep with a rifle across his knees. "We wait," the skinny one whispered. "Boss says she'll come." All women are soft. The other boy swallowed. "You sure this is the place?" "Boss said she's got a scar behind her ear." "Don't forget a face like that." Eliza stepped from the trees with her rifle raised. They froze. The knife dropped from the skinny one's hand. "I'll say this once," she said. "Go west. Walk until your boots fall apart. If I see you again, I won't miss." The younger boy started crying, silent and broken. They ran. Eliza buried the hare so its death meant something. Then she walked home, alone but unshaken. Matthew returned that night. She told him everything. He listened, jaw locked tight. "They're circling," he said, "testing us." She nodded. "Let them." 3 nights later, they came for real. 5 men, torches, rifles. Cruelty carved into their faces like it was born there. The first one fell into a trap and screamed as the stake tore his leg open. The others didn't stop. Matthew fired from the root cellar. Eliza took the west window. Jonah limped from room to room, snapping at shadows. A torch hit the porch. Flames climbed the wall. Eliza shot the man who threw it clean through the chest. The back door exploded open. The biggest of them barged in, coat filthy, beard greasy, shotgun raised. A spade tattoo burned into his neck. "I told you I'd come," he growled. She raised her rifle. He slammed it away with the butt of his gun. He grabbed her arm, twisting. "I should have chained you when I had the chance." She headbutted him. His nose cracked. She stabbed a knife into his side. Once, twice, 3 times. He staggered. She hit him with a cast-iron pan so hard the handle bent. He dropped. Matthew burst in as the man's body hit the floor. The fight outside was over. 2 more gang members dead in the yard. The rest vanished into the hills, leaving blood and silence behind them. Eliza stood shaking, covered in the man's blood. Matthew touched her face, wiping soot from her cheek. "You did what I couldn't," he said. "I did what I had to," she whispered. "They burned the bodies. No markers, no names, just ash and the prairie wind." The ranch was quiet again, but it was not the same place, and they were not the same people. Days passed, then weeks. Then spring crept in with green grass and soft mornings. They rebuilt the porch, reinforced the walls, planted new seed in the thawed earth. Eliza slept beside Matthew now, not out of fear but choice. A marshal came one day, asking questions. Matthew said nothing. Eliza held his stare until he looked away. He rode off without another word. That night, she opened the sealed letter Matthew had written before the fight. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I hope I died standing beside you. You don't owe me anything except this. Live. Let the land make you whole." She folded it and put it back. Years passed. Not easy, but honest. They never married. They didn't need a preacher to know what they were. A son came the next spring. Quiet like Matthew, sharp like her. She raised him to survive, but also to live free. When he asked why they had no one but each other, Eliza said, "Because I earned the right to choose, and I chose your father." He listened when no one else did. Sometimes she dreamed of the boarding house, the bruises, the fear. But she woke to safety, not terror. She was no longer the woman who trembled at footsteps. She was Eliza Granger, no man's bride, no man's property. A survivor who found peace in the arms of a rancher who listened with his heart. And together, they built a life no bullet could steal.